All right, we're rolling. Yeah.
There we are. Welcome, everybody. This is Two Beards in a Bible. I'm John Swayno.
I'm Dave Tenney.
And we are in Colossians chapter 3, roundabouts verse 12.
Yeah, that's what you think.
Right.
I thought it was 18, but I think you're right.
Well, let's meet in the middle. What's halfway between 12 and 18?
Oh, boy. 16? 15? I don't know. Math was never my strong suit.
Me either.
I guess I'll read. I'm going to read through... I'll read through 17. The character of the new man. That's what we're going to talk about. It says, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering, bearing with one another and forgiving one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you must also do. But above all these things, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also you are called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. And whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. It's hard not to sing that.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Whatever you do in word or deed.
Right. Do all in the name of the Lord.
Yes, you got it. Oh, my word.
We'll spare them a Dave and John singing.
Yeah, we don't need to do a duo right now. We'll leave that to people that have talent.
There you go.
So first he starts off, he says, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved. The elect of God. What is the elect of God? Who is the elect? What are we elected to?
If you elect something, you choose it, so it would be the chosen.
That's a good way to look at it, absolutely.
Yeah. Those that, God chose those that would follow after him, those that would be obedient to him. And so it would be those that, as it goes on, kind of, holy and beloved. If someone is to be holy,
they're set apart.
They're set apart, and they're how do you measure holiness? You would measure it against the measuring stick of God.
Yeah.
And so, that in and of itself, and that kind of lends back to the whole obedience, because we can't be holy, in the same sense that God can,
is, right.
But if we are obedient, we're sanctified.
Yeah.
We're purified.
Yeah.
And so, and beloved, those that are close to him. If your beloved is, Julie and your family, and brethren in the church, and so on, and absolutely, that would be the people that are close to God.
He's got some putting ons. There's lots of putting ons and putting offs.
Yeah.
Especially in Paul's writing. So some things we're to put on: tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering, bearing with one another. Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Right.
If anyone has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you must also do.
And that's an interesting thought with forgiveness. I think a lot of people, myself included, I don't claim to have a perfect grasp on it, but I think I have a better grasp on it than I used to.
Yeah.
The idea of forgiveness. And the more that I look at it, the more I realize that it's really not equated with, completely forgetting everything that happened. You hear forgive and forget.
Yeah.
And there's even to some degree, where we know that God, when he forgives us, he wipes our sins away as if they never happened. But at the same time, when we're talking about forgiving our brother, you have to exercise some wisdom there. We forgive them, and we don't hold and that's something that's probably the hardest part, not to hold a grudge against them. But I don't know that I've completely figured out how to completely forget about the the thing that has been done. And I don't know that it's wise to do.
I'm not sure you can forget about it.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Right. I've been told by others that, you absolutely just wipe it away and you forget about it. And I'm like, well, I understand that, but I don't know. I don't know how to do that completely. But I do know that there are, for instance, people that have perhaps wronged me in the past, and there were some rough feelings. I honestly don't feel any angst towards them.
Yeah.
I don't hate them, and I don't hold anything against them. I just perhaps wouldn't do the same thing with them again.
Right.
As far as, let's say somebody rips you off in business or something, you can forgive them and move on with your life, but at the same time, you might not give them your money again.
Now, certainly in this case, we're talking about Christians.
We are, and that
is a little bit different.
You're right.
Even though, what did Peter? What did Jesus tell Peter? How many times was he supposed to forgive? 490, right?
Right.
And then that's the it. No, that's not what he meant. Right.
Yeah.
7 times 70.
Right.
I mean, he was supposed to forgive us. You just keep forgetting. Now the thing is we can't let our remembrance hinder our forgivance. Forgivance.
Right.
How do I?
I like
speak English for me.
I like forgiverance. That's
Forgiverance.
That's good.
Oh my gosh.
Forgiveness. Yeah.
Forgiveness. Yes, I've had a long day, and 10 of my neurons just died. So I'm sorry.
I mean, with forgiveness, it is something that it's something you have to learn how to do.
Yes.
It's something that takes time, and it takes study and true trust and faith in the Lord.
Yeah.
When somebody, you think of a horrible situation where perhaps, somebody murders somebody, and I've seen or heard of situations where someone in the church, somebody in their family was murdered.
Yeah.
And they actually went and spoke to this person in prison, befriended them, preached the gospel to them, baptized this person, and when they got out of prison, they gave them a place to live and a place to start over.
Wow.
And then that would take a lot.
Oh, it would take a lot.
It would take an awful lot. And that, speaking from our human emotions, you think about that and you just wonder how they could do that. But it's really to their credit.
Yeah.
It's commendable. And it's perhaps an example of the way we should operate with the idea of forgiveness.
Absolutely. He talks about bearing with one another, and I think that's, I think that can be hard sometimes. Mm-hmm. Certainly when you think about maybe people that you attend worship with, you may be a different kind of person than some of the other people are.
Most of us are in some way.
But I was thinking about this today. I've been married for over 20 years, and so have you. Mm-hmm. And my wife is a different kind of person than I am. Mm-hmm. Like, she has to bear with me, and I have to bear with her, right? Right? We both have our little quirks that probably annoy. Not probably. I know they do. They annoy each other.
Yeah. I talked about that on Sunday. That one of the examples that I used, and it's superficial, but when I go around the house, I've realized that my wife tells me, and I know it's true, that I'll go to the kitchen and I'll make my coffee or do something, and I'll leave 3 cupboard doors open. And she's always, why don't you just close the cupboards? And I'm like, well, I don't know. So she bears with that. She hasn't, put her foot down and decided to make that an issue of contention. She bears with that, and that's a goofy thing. But in many ways, with our brother, and we gotta just not make a thing a point of contention and just bear with one another. Yeah,
I mean the people are different, and we have to be able to get past those differences. And like you said, you gotta you know.
I mean, there are the things that are unget-overable, when it comes to, there's another, word
Yeah,
creation.
yes, yeah.
But the thing, when it comes to things of the doctrine of Christ, something we can point our finger to in the scriptures, there's no movement on that.
Right,
It doesn't
absolutely.
matter if you're right or I'm right, the Bible has to
Yeah,
be right.
yep, absolutely.
But when it comes to, I think we need to start the services at 9:30 instead of 9 o'clock, or we need to have blue carpet rather than red carpet.
Right.
I mean, just bear with one another.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and those are like there's so many things that a congregation may get involved in an argument over, and
Yeah.
man, a lot of them just don't matter.
Right.
They really, really don't matter.
Yeah.
You know,
I have run into seen it throughout the years, a few little things, in the arguments among brethren that make me scratch my head, like, why are we fighting over this?
Yeah.
But certainly in the world, there have been those times where I've been, especially in business, blindsided by the thing that caused trouble.
yeah,
And I'm like, I never in a million years would have seen that coming down the pike.
Yeah.
That would actually cause someone to be upset. Or,
Yeah.
So we get surprised by those things. Wherever there's two human beings, there's
Yeah.
the opportunity to
certainly the thing
clash.
that's some minor thing to you may be
Yeah.
really important to somebody else, and
Right.
and vice versa. Usually, if it's really important to somebody else, I just say, well, then you can do that.
Right. Well, and sometimes
Make that your own. Huh?
yeah, and sometimes it's just a personality thing, where, I've heard it said sometime where, someone will say, well, so-and-so didn't say hi to me last Sunday. And I'm like, well, okay, go say hi to them this Sunday. And that's that sort of thing that can really drive a wedge between people if you take that person that is mad because someone didn't say hi to him, and they just hush up and go run away from that person for the rest of the Sundays, so nobody says hi to each other, then you end up having a rift between people, and sometimes at least 50% of them don't even know what it's about.
Somebody was complaining to me the other Sunday morning that somebody had used the wrong paper in the copier, the expensive paper.
Oh.
And why we're wasting money on this. And I listened, and then I'm like, well, in the grand scheme of things, this extra 50 cents that was spent, probably not a big deal.
Right.
And it's hard to address those issues sometimes.
Right. And it is, it is just a human interaction.
Yeah. You just got to bear with people.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
Just like they're bearing with us.
And the idea of bearing with is, you'd almost say the stronger of the two, I suppose, that the one that can look at the situation, step back and say, okay, this is not ultimately eternally important, so I'm going to step back and let them have it this way.
Yeah.
Because it just really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And that, that can, you bring in one of the things that, I don't know, I think it's a little bit insidious, is like a doctrine of fairness.
Yeah.
When we start thinking about, well, that's not fair because I need to have this much say in this or that, then you start treading into the area of kindergarten mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
All right, so we got to bear with one another. He says, if anyone has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you must do. So I think this addresses a thing. Sometimes I can tell you this: if you want to really get your feelings hurt, become a preacher or a teacher.
Yep.
You want to get your feelings hurt because people will say, and sometimes I don't think they realize what they're saying.
Right.
But people will say very, very mean things to you.
Yeah.
So I typically just let it go.
Yeah.
Just whatever.
I was visiting my dad yesterday, and he just, as you know, moved into a independent living facility. And there's a lady that lives there that just always kind of looks angry, and I've kind of taken her as my project.
Oh, there you go.
That when I'm there, I'm going to talk to her,
Yeah.
and I'm going to smile, and I'm gonna break her eventually.
Yeah.
and we're walking down the hall yesterday, and she comes down the hall, and I smiled and said, "Hi, how are you this evening?" And she said, "I'm good. How are you?" And then when she went past us, she screamed out of vulgarity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I just kind of turned my head, and I just keep walking, because I don't know the situation. Maybe she's got issues that are underlying.
Oh, I think she's got issues that are
Right.
underlying. But I think you've already diagnosed the situation.
But regardless, it's not worth it. What did you say?
Oh,
It's just,
yeah.
that might be the prideful thing to do. According to the world, is don't let people walk all over
Right,
you. But
yeah.
as Christians, we're called to be a little different.
Yeah.
And our personal feelings don't matter as much.
Yeah.
Because it's Christ and His will that we're seeking out to live out, and that doesn't mean that's I'm sure for another podcast, but it doesn't mean that we again allow ourselves to be just walked all over.
No.
But at the same time, you pick your battles, and
Yeah.
you pick them with the scriptures as a guide.
There's some things that are worth fighting over.
Yeah.
But but they're actually few and far between.
Yeah. Yeah, and I read something in a post on a what do you call it, social media site, and it had to do with political things, but one of the points of advice to people was to wait 48 hours before responding to something online.
That's
And
probably
I stopped and thought about that, and I'm like, well, boy, that's just good advice.
Yeah,
period. And when you get yourself all hyped up over something, I'm a fixer,
Yeah.
and I think most men are. Let's just nip it in the bud. What's the problem? Let's fix it now. Let's get it over with. And the best thing to do in many cases is just step back, think about it, get yourself calmed down, and so you can think rationally, and then pick your steps.
There's a lot of times, like on YouTube videos, I'll want to post, and I'll post a comment. I won't post it. I'll write this big long comment, and then I'll just delete it all. So
At least you got it out of you.
Yeah, I don't want to post that.
Right.
So
I have placed myself on a commenting moratorium when it comes, because I used to get into some of those battles.
Oh yeah.
Online, and I just realized that non-face-to-face interaction is just
It's
breeding ground for hurt feelings, and nobody's really communicating there, and so it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And there are times where I have to use my left hand to hold my right hand down.
Yep.
To keep from putting anything out there.
Yeah.
But it's the wise thing to do.
If you see somebody post something crazy on Facebook, especially if they're a brother or sister in Christ, pick up the phone and call them.
Right.
That's the way to respond to them.
Or pull them aside.
Yeah.
Take them out to get some coffee.
Yeah. Don't post something back.
Right.
Because that's just going to start a war.
Right.
And it's been done many times in the past.
And that is part of the example of how to bear with.
Right. Yeah, so he continues, he says, above all these things, he says, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. And, if you love people, you're not going to, that's going to restrict your actions.
Right.
It's gonna kind of, it's gonna govern, how you deal with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone can see that in their lives, no matter where you're at. Chances are you love somebody.
Yeah.
And you probably will put up with a little bit more from that person.
Absolutely.
Than otherwise. So that kind of gives you a little glimpse of what the Lord is telling His people to do, is to love one another and to treat each other accordingly.
Yeah, I think some different people struggle with this more than others. Mm-hmm. I think we're all susceptible to certain kinds of sin, and some people this sort of thing is not a problem. Mm-hmm. I've noticed like I've known Christians in the past, even just people in the world a lot of times, it's just like they can keep their mouth shut. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem like it's even hard for them.
Right.
Or maybe they're just totally tuned out and I'm reading it totally wrong. But there's a value in that.
Yeah. Well, and that might be one of the tricks to being able to keep your mouth shut is tune out for a minute.
Yeah.
Let them talk. When I was in business, sometimes you'd get an angry customer call up, and there were those people that I would put the phone down on the desk. I could still hear them,
Yeah.
And then when they were done, I'd pick it up and we'd come to a resolution.
Yeah.
But
get it out.
But it is better to just let that, just keep your mouth shut. And there's scriptural basis for the idea of biting your tongue and
absolutely,
and not allowing yourself to just blurt everything out. And that's something we all have, as you said, to varying degrees. We all have. It's a lesson that I've talked with one of my sons with several times. Telling him that sometimes you just need to just not talk.
Yeah,
Just stop digging a hole.
It's hard to learn, and I know the son of which you speak, and he's a smart kid,
right?
And I think he because he knows, and a lot of the things he talks about, he knows these things,
right?
And so he wants to,
right?
He wants to let you know he knows those things, and it's
right.
That's normal, actually, But it's, I see a little bit of myself in him sometimes because I'm kind of the same way.
Right.
It's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, and we all that's part of the process of growth when you become a Christian.
Yes.
When you put away worldly things, when you seek after the Lord, at some point, not just prior to your baptism, but you're going to have a lot of Acts 2 situations where you're cut to the heart.
Yep.
And you're going to have to make some changes, and that's not ever fun.
No.
So
that's the work, man.
Yeah.
He says, verse 15, he says, let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which you were also called in one body. So that one body is the
church.
The church. And be thankful. We talked about that when we studied Ephesians, about the body being the church. He says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. So you can't let the word can't dwell in you richly unless you put it in you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. To dwell means to be with.
Yes.
If I'm dwelling with Dave, we are together.
Yes.
And you can't do that when you can't dwell in the Word of God. The Word of God can't dwell in you if you don't ever open the Bible.
Yeah.
Put it into your heart, your mind.
I was reading this book, and it was talking about being a Bible teacher. And the author made the point that unless you have read the Bible, you are not qualified to teach the Bible. And he used the example, said, just pretend you were in high school and you took a science course and your teacher had not read the science book. What kind of teacher would you be? Not a very good one, right? So,
when I was in college, I don't know if this is still to all you teachers out there, I don't really believe this. My wife is a teacher. But one of the things that would be said about the teaching profession is if you can't do anything else, go teach.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, teach it.
It's those that can do and those that can't teach.
Yeah. And I know that's not, that's it's hyperbole. That's a gross generalization.
I worked in a music store for like 3 years, and there at the music store there were like, let's say there were 8 teachers. Okay. Most of the teachers, except for a couple of us, had gone to college and were, but a lot of them were not good players. If that can, which it makes it's hard to understand that. But they could teach the instrument, but they weren't very good at playing the instrument.
Yeah.
Like they understood it, but they didn't put the time in playing.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple of us like me who could play, pretty well, but maybe I wasn't the best teacher because I didn't have the education, or I wasn't formally trained.
Yeah. Well, and that probably depends on the student too,
Yeah.
because everybody learns a little bit differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's when you think of. It makes me think of a friend of mine whose dad. I probably used the example before. He's read the Bible cover to cover uncounted times.
Yeah.
And we would come home when I was a teenager. We'd come home late at night and walk in the door, and there his dad would be reading the Bible. And in all those times of reading the Bible, he never really put it into his heart because he still resists the idea of true salvation. He has not been obedient to the gospel.
Yeah.
But he knows it.
Yeah.
And in fact, he can probably quote it just as well as any well-read Bible student that we might know.
Yeah.
But to actually take it to heart and actually
it wasn't
follow
dwelling. It wasn't dwelling. The word wasn't dwelling in his heart.
Right. And that's that gets at what the heart really is.
It's your brain. Right?
Well, yeah, and certainly it has to start there.
Yeah.
But there's something there's something more than just a knowledge, but it has to be like it has to be active in your thoughts, and it has to guide your intents, because we can know, like you said, you can know it, but you can't.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you do it.
Right. He says, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. So I guess when we sing hymns, we're singing them to each other.
Right.
That's one of the things. I think we're also making a melody in our hearts.
Right.
And we're trying to. He says singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. It's an act of worship as well, but I think it accomplishes a couple of things.
Right.
And then the last thing, verse 17, he says, and whatever you do in a word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God, your Father, through him. And there's a recipe for trying to stay away from sin.
Yeah.
Or sinful things.
Right. And something to be said there, if you're going to do something in the name of the Lord, it better be according to his will.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's if anybody signs your name to a contract and they don't share the same desire as you do for the situation, you would take them to court and they would be guilty of forgery.
Yeah.
But if you give like when I used to manage a driving school, all of us instructors and managers had a signature stamp. And our signature stamp was to be used by the secretaries to stamp all the certificates and all the paperwork that needed to be sent to the state. And they had permission to do that, and that was according to, our agreement.
Yeah.
And the Lord has an agreement with his people, and we better not use his stamp.
Absolutely.
In order to
for the wrong thing, especially.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, John, let's go ahead and shut her down.
Oh, all right.
I think
time flies.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining in. We'll pick up then at Colossians 3, verse 18.
18. Yeah.
See you next time.